Hey guys, you're watching Tech Edit. My name is Basil and this is the Oppo Find N5, easily the best folding phone in the world in my opinion, bar none. It absolutely smacks the Galaxy Z Fold 6 and Google Pixel 9 Pro Fold as well. The Honor Magic V3 can't compete with it either. Reason being, this phone is so thin, so light, so powerful, good enough for excellent gaming. And the only area it really drops the ball for me is in terms of the ultra wide camera. And I guess the other cameras aren't quite as good as they could be, but this phone is awesome. A couple of disclaimers before I dive into all of the details. The first one, I've been using this phone for 3 whole months, a bit more actually. And you may be thinking, how have you used it for 3 months? It's not been out that long. Reason is I worked with Oppo on the launch of this phone many months ago. I'm not being paid by Oppo to make this video, and on the plus it means I know this phone really well, but I wanted to say that for full transparency. Second thing, if you're not already subscribed to Tech Edit, please do. It's how you stay on top of everything that I do. Right, now I'm going to dive into the details on the Oppo Find N5. Before I talk about this phone though, let's start with a brief history lesson. This is a story about how Oppo made some of the best foldables in the world and inspired Google to make worse versions. Find N and Find N2 were kind of squat foldables when Samsung was making long ones. That gave you more room to type on and it made a lot of sense. They didn't launch outside China, but Google then launched the Pixel Fold and that was heavier, chunkier, and in my opinion, a worse foldable across the board that didn't even unfold flat. Next, you have the Find N3, also known as the OnePlus Open. This changed the game for camera phones, adding an awesome camera system in there, but it also overhauled the design language. Unmistakably, Google took inspiration from it this time around as well, but didn't do quite as good a job because it has chunkier bezels and framing, and the camera surround being off to the center just doesn't look as good in my opinion. So that's 2 Google foldables that have quite clearly taken inspiration from Oppo, but not done quite as good a job. Now on to the Find N5. Oppo missed 4 because 4 is an unlucky number in China, and this phone could be a crystal ball into what the Pixel 10 Pro Fold looks like. I hope it is, but I hope Google does a better job of emulating what Oppo's done right here, if so. I bought the Pixel 9 Pro Fold with my own money, and honestly, I regret it. I regretted it after just a couple of weeks because the cameras were so weak and the design felt dated compared to what Oppo and Honor were doing. And that's why if you're tossing up between the Pixel 9 Pro Fold and Oppo Find N5, it may well be worth importing it. Both phones are expensive. This phone is just much, much better. Back to reviewing the Find N5, and the design of this phone is the first thing that sets it apart. When it's open, it's just 4.2 millimeters thin, and that's really impressive, but it's the closed thickness that day to day makes it feel most excellent. 8.93 millimeters. The fact that it has flat sides as well makes it feel more like a traditional phone. Now, phones like the Honor Magic V3 are a similar thickness, but because they have rounded sides, they feel like 2 halves. Find N5, by contrast, feels much more like a unified device when closed, and then you open it up into that ultra thin tablet. Compared to the Find N3, it looks like the screens have been expanded and the frame has been shrunk. It feels like a slice of the future when it's opened up. On the left-hand side, you have a 3 kind of point slider, alert slider for vibrate, ring, and silent. And on the right-hand side is the volume and the power button, which doubles up as a fingerprint scanner as well. Also worth noting, both volume and power button are on the same side of the phone, which is great. Unlike with the Honor Magic V3, one is on one is on the other. When you open it, it can be a little bit confusing when you want to use them. At the base, you've got the USB-C port, and it's barely thinner than the phone itself, and that's on the right side of the phone. And on the left side, when open, you've got the SIM slot, and you also have the loudspeaker. It's a dual loudspeaker. The other one is up above the left side of the phone. You also have an infrared blaster as well, and obviously on the left side is the hinge. Around the back you have a kind of fiber material. It isn't a glass back, but you also have the camera surround that doesn't protrude too much, but still gives you a little bit of a kind of shelf to rest your finger on. This feels very elegant, very refined compared to the Find N3 and OnePlus Open with that smaller camera bump. I would have preferred a larger camera bump because I'm a camera geek, but I can definitely understand why Oppo went with this very sleek design. As far as durability goes, this is IPX6, X8 and X9 water resistant. There's no certified dust resistance. I've used it every day in Singapore when I went there for a few days, and in the UK and other travels, and across humid climates right through to our very grey British weather. It's handled everything just fine, and it has got wet as well. But do bear in mind, this is still a foldable, has moving parts, and the inner display will be more fragile than non-folding phones. On the front you have Oppo's Nano Shield glass. On the inside it's an ultra thin glass plus that layer on top. It's going to be more prone to scratches. Oppo doesn't want you to peel that layer off, and it's also going to be more prone to fingerprints than a traditional glass display. That's the same for all foldables. However, the back panel really nicely repelled fingerprints, that kind of fiber composite, and the aerospace aluminium frame plus that front display also do a decent job of repelling fingerprints, which means aside from the inner screen, this thing is going to look pretty box fresh when you take it out of your pocket. The phone's available in black, which I have, which is super neutral, super classic, and a misty white color, which has a kind of weird shimmer. I don't love the white color. It's a bit reminiscent of the Poco F6 Pro. I much prefer the black one, although I do wish there was a cool alternative variant, maybe even in vegan leather like with Find N3. Maybe we'll get that down the line. Now, the design is very good, but the other thing that really helps this phone stand out is the hinge. It does not creak, it does not seem to wobble. After 3 months, I'm really impressed with how secure and solid it is, especially compared to the Onomagic V3, which is a much springier, much creakier experience by comparison. So if my time with this phone is anything to go by, I really have got high hopes for its longevity. Hopefully the reality matches up, but I'm going to keep using this phone until I have to swap it out to a better foldable, which I'm guessing will be some time. Onto the screens, and on the front you've got a 6.6-inch display. It's nice and sharp, over 400 pixels per inch, and it's also very bright. Climbs up to 1600 nits in high brightness mode and over 2000 nits when playing back HDR content. Also great to see that out of the box this thing's Netflix HDR10 certified and supports Dolby Vision as well for Netflix, plays back at full HD. The screen's 120 Hz as well, adaptive refresh rate, so nice, smooth and efficient. And based on the size, the quality, you can pretty much do everything with this phone closed, and that is exactly what you want. You're never forced into the inner screen. When you do have a spreadsheet, for example, or you want to multitask across apps, by all means open it, and it will be a glorious thing, especially when you are in a restaurant and you want to share a photo with someone on the other side of the table. But when it's closed, it can do everything, and that, in my opinion, is a mark of a really good foldable. Onto the inner screen, and I'm going to kick off by talking about the crease, and it is so invisible when you're head on with the screen on. That is astoundingly impressive for a phone that is this thin. Better than the Z Fold 6 and Google Pixel 9 Pro Fold without a shadow of a doubt. So really impressed with that, but the quality is also decent as well. The inside screen climbs up to 1400 nits in high brightness mode, and once again, HDR content plays back at over 2000 nits in the highlights. So very, very bright, easy to see outdoors, also 120 hertz adaptive refresh rate, nice and smooth, responsive as well. I gamed on this thing with the screen open and it was super responsive for ages. In fact, a criticism of this phone is that it's almost too thin when you're gaming when it's open and you get really intense into battle, for example. I was specifically playing Honkai Star Rail. I found myself kind of gripping the phone and I would have just appreciated more phone to grip. So the engineering is almost too impressive how Oppo's made it this thin. So that's a good thing and a bad thing right there. But as far as the display quality across both go, like I said, it's going to check all your boxes, both in terms of quality viewing and responsiveness. At 8.12 inches, the Find N5 has the largest screen of any book style, i.e. phone that unfolds like a book, foldable. And that's really impressive. It's got a larger surface area than an iPad mini. The screen shape may not be as useful to everybody as an iPad mini, but if you are multitasking two apps side by side, it's going to be significantly better. And also spreadsheets, PDFs, looking at photos, editing photos in Lightroom, really, really good. Yes, when you watch movies on it, it is going to give you some big letterboxing, unless they're old school, original Dragon Ball episodes, which will play back kind of 4:3. They will look full screen and awesome on here, but 16:9, 21:9 content especially. Thankfully though, with that secure hinge, you can part fold it, rest it on a surface, and that video will display in the top half in a much more appropriate aspect ratio, or you can just watch it on the cover display, which, like I said earlier, is pretty much compromise free and looks excellent for movies. So it goes back to what I was saying, closed, open. The Oppo Find N5 does a really good job of displaying whatever you're looking at. If the design and screen were a highlight, the camera is much more of a low light here. It's not bad, but it's definitely not excellent. There's a triple camera, primary, ultra wide, and telephoto. The primary camera is respectable. It's a Sony Light 700 sensor. It's 1/1.56 inches, which is not huge, but not tiny either. And there's a fast f1.8 aperture as well. Footage, photos from it, they all look decent. So that's what you're going to want to lean on for the most part. Then there's the periscope camera, and this has telemacro focus. That is fantastic to see on a high-end foldable and opens up a world of versatility. Macro photography, obviously, but it also means you can get decent product shots out of here. It's a Samsung JN5 sensor, 1/2.8 inch size. So again, not the biggest, but not tiny, and does a good job across most lighting conditions. The ultra wide is the weakest of the pack. It's an 8 megapixel sensor, and it does have autofocus, so can take macro shots. But when the lights drop, that autofocus is hit or miss, and also the photos are hit or miss too. They look pretty soft, and when you have moving subjects, they're going to be quite blurry. So you definitely want to lean on the primary and the telephoto cameras here. As far as highlights go, I really do like Oppo's Hasselblad portrait mode. It does a really good job of foreground background separation, and you can also dial things back to make the bokeh look really nice and realistic. I also rate Oppo's photo processing, handles shadows and highlights really respectably. I prefer it to Honor's photo processing. Even with the discrepancy in hardware, there's more consistency across the three cameras in terms of color and how images are handled than I got on the Magic V3. And I do also like Hasselblad Master Mode, which is Oppo's Pro Photo mode. Video also looks really good from that primary and the telephoto camera. The 8 megapixel ultra wide can't shoot 4K native video, but it still upscales to 4K. So you do kind of get 4K across all three cameras. at least, which is nice to see. If you're a vlogger, you can still lean on the primary camera. When you open it up, use the cover screen as a preview and use the big primary camera sensor to capture with a more shallow depth of field. But the ultra wide is going to be relatively out of bounds unless it is perfect lighting. And a lot of vloggers prefer ultra wide because it's a safer bet. You're going to guarantee you're going to get more in frame. It can shoot Dolby Vision 4K 30 across all three cameras, which I was surprised about given the spec of the ultra wide. But if you want 4K 60 Dolby Vision HDR, then you're going to want to be using the primary or the telephoto camera. Despite everything I've said that is wrong with this camera, I would still pick it over the Pixel 9 Pro Fold because I really like the telemacro feature, and I'd pick it over the Galaxy Z Fold 6 because I much prefer Oppo's photo processing. So for everyone who's absolutely bashing the camera here because of that 8 megapixel ultra wide, as a package it still works for me better than most of the foldable competition. On to performance, and you may well have seen that this ships with a Snapdragon 8 Elite from Qualcomm, the flagship chipset, but it's the slightly dialed back 7-core variant. And honestly, I didn't notice that one bit during my time with it. I was just more impressed the phone ran cool. And Antutu benchmarks are over 2,200,000 roughly, and that's with performance mode on. And I gamed on this thing for hours. Honkai Star Rail 60 frames per second. What's really cool about Honkai Star Rail is when you game on it with the screen open, you have kind of a slight letterboxing in the game, which actually makes it feel like less is cropped out, so that's pretty sweet. Also with the screen closed, Genshin Wuthering Waves for ages as well. Max graphics settings, no crazy overheating by any stretch. Really comfortable. The only time I got a heat warning is when I was trying to. I opened up Wuthering Waves, Honkai Star Rail, and Genshin Impact in 3-window split screen, and it then said it's going to close one of the apps, which indeed it did. But that is such an artificial load on this thing over 3 months day to day. Gaming, watching, music listening, map navigating, word processing, photo and video taking. I didn't have any performance issues whatsoever. Nice and quick as far as interface goes. Also, video editing was solid on here. LumaFusion on a foldable is wonderful. So when you compare it to alternatives like the OnePlus Open on a Magic V3 and indeed the Galaxy Z Fold 6, it's more powerful. It doesn't matter if it's 7 or 8 cores. Phones have got to the point where they do everything you need them to do. They play back the best, latest 3D games that I need at least smoothly, and you can play for hours, which is excellent. What matters much more to me is design, screen quality, and, as I'll come on to, battery life. With 16 gigabytes of RAM and up to an additional 12 gigabytes with RAM expansion and 512 gigabytes of storage as standard, memory configurations on this thing are sweet. And ColorOS, the interface Oppo lays over Android 15, is excellent as well. There are a lot of AI features that Oppo's added. So for example, it can summarize meeting notes and you can transcribe audio recordings, etc. All stuff we've seen before. Oppo's AI Eraser is one of the best that I've used. And I also really like the 4K upscaling, which takes a picture, whether it's a crop or a picture that's just a bit low resolution, and sharpens it up. I actually ended up using that feature on the phone to make a poster that I needed to get printed when the printer said it was too low resolution, and it did a better job than online services on my desktop. So there's a lot of value. It's not just AI for the sake of it, which is really great to see. And on a foldable, you can really take full advantage of that interplay with apps like Lightroom, and it can become a true creative powerhouse, especially like I said with things like LumaFusion for video editing. And that's before you even come on to Oppo's Mac integration, which is so game-changing if you are a Mac user. If you are, you've got an Android phone, you'll know that it's a pain to transfer even photos from your Mac to your Android by plugging it in, and wireless protocols, first party, are non-existent. There may be third party options, but it's such a faff. With O+ Connect for Mac, it completely cuts through the noise. So on the phone, you can mirror your Mac screen, which is amazing. You can do that remotely and pull files from it. And while that's technically more impressive, more useful is the file sharing feature where you have access to your phone files on your Mac, and you can send Mac files to your phone by dragging them into this app. It really is seamless. And what's so cool is on your Mac with the client open, if you even take a screenshot or you take a picture, it'll let you know that there is a new file. And so you can then just click it and drag it onto your Mac desktop. So it plays really, really well into this notion that Oppo introduced on Find X8 Pro, where the Find series and Oppo's flagship phones can interplay with iOS devices very, very seamlessly. In fact, I'd go so far as to say the integration with macOS is even more seamless than iOS, because iPhones, you need your friend to have installed an application to share files to them. With O+ Connect for Mac, you just have to have it installed on your own device, your MacBook or Mac computer, and then you can enjoy seamless file transfers. If you saw my OnePlus Open review, Oppo Find N3 review, you may remember Open Canvas for OnePlus, Boundless view for Oppo, and this allowed, when your phone was open, to have multitasking with two apps off screen in a big screen view and one app on screen, and you could just fly between them very easily. Or if they were phone style screen views, you could have one appear off screen to the left or to the right. This multitasking is genius. Oppo's upgraded it slightly by putting 3 dots at the top of the screen just to help facilitate switching one app to another, and it's excellent, as it always was, but now it's just that bit better. I really do think every foldable needs this feature. Arguably the most impressive aspect of the Find N5 is the 5600 milliamp battery. It's bigger than all the competition, despite the fact this phone is thinner. It's because Oppo's silicon carbon, the second generation of the battery technology, is in here, and it lasts for ages. Easily you'll be able to get a full day out of the phone, if not more. I could not be more impressed with the battery, and what's more impressive still is the fact that, unlike with the Find N3 and OnePlus Open, Oppo has got wireless charging on here. So you've got 80-watt wired charging and 50-watt wireless charging, so you can power it up in under an hour. And with that, Oppo's Find N5 is hands down the best foldable in the world. Hopefully you understand why I think that, even with the compromises to the camera, for example. Now, is it worth importing? If you have the money and you want a foldable that is really, really pushing boundaries, absolutely. But you just have to bear in mind, you have to be okay with the fact the warranty may not be valid, or probably won't be valid where you are if you are importing it, and the camera isn't class leading. It's fine, it's good enough for most situations, but it isn't the best you can get on a foldable, and definitely isn't the best you can get on a phone. But the productivity potential, the design, the feel, the screens in terms of how they interplay as well, closed, half closed, open, all, in my opinion, a cut above any other foldable on the market. So what do you think? Oppo Find N5 check your boxes, or is it just too expensive and does importing it sound like too much of a faff or too much of a risk? It is expensive. Depending on where you live, the importing fees will vary. But if you do want the best, this is most certainly it. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please do click that thumbs up button. Subscribe to Tech Edit to stay on top of everything that I do. Let me know your thoughts about the Oppo Find N5 and what other videos you want to see. Thanks for watching.